to use Megyn Kelly's phrase, we have crossed the Rubicon to think that we are ever going to get back to a place where everybody who is not a degenerate is going to be religious. All right, welcome back to the party, everybody. This is Morty, and I am your host, Lutch, aka the Indian Jesus, here to resurrect the second coming of common sense. Let's party. So, guys, I'm going to be honest with you. I did not even know that Megyn Kelly was still doing her thing. And we just saw the video with Russell Brand on Ben Shapiro's show, The Search, which I also was not aware of. So I did some digging, and apparently Megyn Kelly has also been a guest on the show. So let's see what they got to say.
To social media, Leah Thomas, it appears, has a serious fixation on autogynephilia and gets off as a man in dressing as a woman. It's a sexual fetish.
That is something that cannot go unsaid anymore. Dylan Mulvaney and Leah Thomas are not transgender individuals. They may appear and identify as transgender individuals, but they are men who get some type of get their jollies off by having other people see them as women. I think it's way worse with Leah Thomas. I think more so with Dylan, it's just a medium for him to get fame. But we have to understand that there are two different types of people who bring on the label transgender. There are those who have what was formerly known as gender dysphoria and just want to live a normal life as the other gender. And then you have people like Leah Thomas who want to make their fetish your problem.
And there are plenty of trans people who will tell you that that is a faction of trans people.
Of course. Alan Joyce has an entire book called Trans in which he talks about autogynephilia.
Exactly. He's amazing. So what we really have is somebody who is in the women's locker room, taking the women's trophies and the women's medals, and getting off on the fact that he is dressed like a woman, immersed with women, and they want the women to get the therapy. That we have crossed the Rubicon now to where formerly tolerant me, don't be so hateful, Dr. Abloh, has become like an activist on this. Like, get out.
Exactly. It's gone too far. It's gone too far, guys. We have to be able to say, look, we understand that this is a real thing, but you are abusing the sensitivities that we have to trans individuals to mask yourself as one so that you can abuse other people.
Get out of our swimming pools, get out of our locker rooms, get off of our track meets, get out. We'll find an accommodation for you. Hopefully you'll get the help you need, but we are not surrendering girlhood or womanhood to you and your mental issues.
Absolutely. This is not about hating on anybody. This is not about hating anybody. This is not about preventing anybody from living the way that they want to live without hurting anybody else. It's when you bring other people into your delusion. It's when you bring other people into your degeneracy that it becomes a problem. That's it. Leave the women and children alone.
I mean, it is insane when you look at the statistics on the social contagion that's occurred. The latest poll that I saw from, I believe it was Pew that came out today, was that almost 20% of all people who identify as Gen Z are now saying they're LGBTQ+.
Oh my God.
Almost 20%. And the generation after that, it's going to be 30 or 40%.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question becomes, number one, whether have we just reached a genetic bottleneck, or is it possible that a massive social contagion is taking place that is geographically located in blue areas?
And this is something that comes up a lot when we talk about debates having to do with trans this, trans that, especially with the children, and how many people are actually doing this. And you'll hear from trans activists all the time, it's only this number, it's only this percent, it's only this. It's only that now. But you are pushing this. You are shoving it down the throats of everyone, including the children who don't know any better. So it might be 5% now. It might be 20% of LGBT, or 20% of the population that's LGBT now. But what happens when this messaging, this propaganda, goes unfettered? It's going to be way more than 20%.
Which is exactly what's happening. And, you know, what that, again, tends to show is that in the absence of any sort of overriding value system, pathology spreads. I mean, people tend to imitate each other's behaviors. And if a society declares something heroic, you will get more of it. You subsidize particular behavior, you get more of that behavior.
Exactly. without a set of values, many of you want to say that that set of values can only be religion, but it just needs to be a set of values. We don't want to push people towards the degeneracy because they don't hold the same beliefs you do if they respect the same values that you do. We can have a society built on values that are not religious, that include the opportunity for you personally to be religious, but also is inclusive of those of us who may not believe in the claims of your religion while still respecting very much the values of that religion.
It's just that simple. And so what society chooses to subsidize and not subsidize does actually have some pretty serious ramifications. And so the breakdown of the intermediate institutions of society, here I talk about church or family, that's going to devastate this entire generation.
Exactly. And let me tell you something. I've said it before and I'll say it again. You will not get the atheists back into church. Maybe some, but it's not just the angry rebellion that maybe it once was. People like myself have done extensive research into our positions. I was brought up in the Catholic Church. I was confirmed in the Methodist Church. And I believed wholeheartedly. I didn't know there was any other way to live. Now, if you're interested in my journey to atheism, there's a ton of content on the channel about it. But the point is that I still very much respect Christian values. I still very much want our society to be based on those types of values. But as long as you keep saying that it only can be religious values, Christian values, even those who are saying Muslim, whatever, you are telling those people who don't believe the same thing that you do, the same truth claim, that they are not in the club of good people. And so, where do they go? Wherever they will be accepted. Right now, it's the LGBT community.
There was a study that came out recently suggesting that young girls are now at the highest risk of suicide that they've ever been at, so far as they're aware. It's something like 37% or 30% of girls actively considered suicide over the course of the last 2 years.
Which is insane.
Nuts. I mean, those numbers are crazy. And people are asking why. And the answer is, well, maybe because you don't give them any guidance on how to become women. You obliterated the category of woman, and then you give them no guidance on how to get there. And then you say that what's going to make you happy is to be on social media all day comparing yourself to others.
Which then tells you the only way to be happy is to sterilize yourself.
And all of the institutions where you used to socialize, I mean, this is an important part of bringing up a kid. This is why I think as our society becomes parent-free, as people don't have kids, all the values go down the drain because you actually have to get serious about life once you have kids. And I say kids, not kid. I think that there are a lot of people who sort of have a kid that's like a dog or a person.
I don't know. I don't have kids. Do you agree, disagree that if you have one kid, it don't count? You have to have multiple?
It's like a thing that you carry around, and this is my kid, and I will do to my kid, and I'll post a TikTok video about how tolerant I am because my kid came home.
I'll call him a baby.
Right, exactly.
A baby.
But once you have multiple kids and you start looking at how hard it is to civilize a child and how terrible small children are and what it takes to make them into adults, you realize that kids, what they actually want is stability. What they want is a role.
I'll tell you this, as a professional dog trainer, it's so similar. A lot of these things. I went to school for psychology, and long story, I didn't really want to get into that, but I ended up being a professional dog trainer. And so much about human psychology is analogous, not directly, but analogous to how dogs think. A lot of times, a lot of my clients will have dogs that are just always getting into trouble, getting into stuff they're not supposed to get into, ripping stuff up, jumping and barking and doing this. And the whole thing is that you haven't given them a job to do. So they're just acting on instinct. If they know that they're supposed to do X, Y, and Z, they want to please you. They want to do a good job. And the same thing holds true, even more so for children. If you just let them be, exposed to this rabid propaganda, and then you send them online with strangers who are going to affirm them no matter what, well, you can't expect them to have any anchoring in reality. And that is a parent's failure.
I mean, I was talking about this with Piers Morgan the other day. When I look at my kids, what my boy, who's 6, wants to do when he grows up, I asked him what he wanted to do, and he said, I want to be a daddy. He said, that's what I want. And if you ask my daughter, like, what would you want to be when you grow up? She would say, a mommy. And so I talk to them at this age about, like, so who in your class do you want to marry? Do they have any concept of what that means? No, but the idea is this is the social expectation, and it is a good social expectation. Yeah. We've now entered a world in which we believe that placing social expectations on our kids is somehow a negative. It's bad. The kids ought to be free. There should be no social expectations of them. I totally disagree. I think social expectations for kids are a wonderful thing. I think it's the thing that makes them into adults.
So that's very, very interesting. I would have expected that specifically Ben Shapiro would not want to be having the conversation with his young children about who in your class do you want to marry because they're young kids. But he is introducing the concept in a way that doesn't do what all these trans activists are trying to do and expose them to the reality of what they're talking about. Like you just said, do they really know what's entailed in being married? No, but they know that, there's an attraction thing and that as far as it needs to go for young children. And so again, going back to parenting, if you don't give your child a baseline, then when they get all the BS from school and social media and TV and all that stuff, they're not going to know any better.
Kids are uncivilized. You civilize them. This is what it means to raise a child. If they didn't need raising, you wouldn't have to raise them. And so I think parents have abdicated this duty almost completely. And this is why people ask me if I'm optimistic ever. And I say, well, as a religious person, yes, because the religious will inherit the earth. We're the only ones who are having children at this point. But also, the only people who have a durable set of values are the ones who are going to be passing those on to their kids.
Yes. It's funny, Ben, because I wasn't raised religious like you. But I did go to church. My parents made us go to Catholic church, and I did all the, confirmation in their community, all the stuff.
See, I would say that's similar to how I grew up, but I was a full believer. I was forced to go to church. We were we weren't super religious in the home outside of reading some passages from the Bible around Christmas and on Easter and stuff like that. But it was very much baked into the values that were instilled in my siblings and I growing up.
But one of the so I'm there. I believe in God and I believe in the Catholic teachings, but I'm not devout.
And I don't believe in the God, but I do believe in the teachings. So where does that leave me? Should I just go be a leftist atheist like so many of them? Or do you, as a thought leader, have a path that you can carve out for people like me who don't believe the same truth claims that you do, but believe in the same values that you do?
One of the main reasons that we go to church every Sunday is the very things you're talking about. Shared values, shared community, reminding my children there's something bigger and more important than them.
So most atheists still crave that stuff. So why is there no space in society for non-believers and believers alike to come together and celebrate those values? You can also still go to church on Sunday if that's your thing. But if you want an American identity to still have an existence in this world, then we need to separate religion from values.
They're part of a bigger social fabric, and these are the values. Part of the benefit of sitting in that pew every Sunday is reinforcement of values. Who matters? God. Who matters? Your mom and dad. If you need advice, who do you go to? One of those three.
And there you go. We need a place for non-religious people or just to be secular, where it doesn't matter whether you believe in this or that. The value still stays the same. Without that, you get more leftists.
Right? It's great to have somebody who they respect, who they see as an authority figure up there saying all the same things that we are saying back at home. This is one of the reasons why this whole discussion, this is like the polar opposite between Jocko Willink and Kim Kardashian.
Shout out to Jocko Willink.
And why I love the former and cannot stand the latter. I don't think Kim Kardashian is an evil person in her heart. It's not about whether she intends evil. But just the other day, Jocko Willink, famed Navy SEAL, like the baddest badass ever, put out a short little video on Instagram, and it basically said, I want to talk to 13, 15, 17-year-old boys. And he said, and I made my boys watch this, and he said, I don't know if anybody's telling you what to do, what we're supposed to do at 13. He said, work out, put on some muscle, learn how to fight, any kind of fight, martial arts, be able to defend yourself if you need it. Don't drink or do drugs. Those things are bad for you. Improve your mind by reading a book. That's good for you, right? Had just like a couple of quick TikToks down. It was like,
and these are things that, especially if you're not religious, you're just not going to hear. And we have, to use Megyn Kelly's phrase, we have crossed the Rubicon to think that we are ever going to get back to a place where everybody who is not a degenerate is going to be religious and have dogmatic beliefs in something that cannot be proven. We're just not in that world anymore. So again, you can gatekeep that all to yourselves, Christians, or we can find a better way to spread that message and those values.
It's like, yes. He's like, I'm not sure if anybody's telling you that. Now, in my family, we are telling the children that, but a lot of families, they're not.
Nope.
So that's Jocko. And then you got Kim Kardashian, who is, look at my ass, look at my boobs, and look at me.
I'm not mad at Megyn Kelly doing that.
And don't bother listening to me. Just look at me. I can't stand what she's doing to our culture. It's not just her, it's really her whole family, but just that general personality and the messaging to our daughters in particular that all of it's real. That's 100% my actual ass. And the sex tape, which is how she got famous without actually owning it. All of it is so abhorrent to me. And it's exactly the opposite of Jocko Willink, all of the wrong inputs into our children, to the point where my daughter and her friend were over and somebody asked me whether the makeup I had was Kim Kardashian. And the other one's like, well, who's Kim Kardashian? I said, I do not wish to be the person who introduces that person into your life.
So again, coming back to the same point, that if kids, let's talk about teenagers who are in this world where, it's not really cool to be religious. So regardless of what you instill in them, when they're 15, they're going with what's cool. And there is too much information out there, whether you believe in it or not, that will convince a teenager that God does not exist. Let's leave that aside because that is happening, whether you want to accept it or not. The merits of which, that's a conversation for another day. But that is happening. So again, I ask, do you want them to be in that position where they have nobody except Kim Kardashian? And maybe if their parents happen to find Jocko's channel or something? Or should that be baked into the American identity? It's up to you. It's up to you.
Right, but these are the battles we're fighting. There are role models, both positive and negative.
I mean, this is also, I think, one of the. I keep coming back to the Robert Nisbet point that you destroy the intermediate institutions and you destroy everything. That the people who are looked up to, like I'm glad there are people like Jocko or people like Jordan Peterson, people who are actually speaking to young men. But when I was growing up and people said, who do you look up to? Who are your heroes?
My rabbi.
People I always said were my parents. It was always like my dad, my mom, maybe a couple of teachers who had helped me along the way. It was never some person who was very, very famous. Right. And because we've changed the metric of success to be fame, what that means is that people are constantly seeing themselves and thinking about themselves. Right? And I can't remember who once said that the way to get over depression is it's not about thinking of thinking less of yourself, it's about thinking of yourself less. Like just
That's a good line. But I mean, you guys should check out the rest of the video on Ben's channel. Very interesting conversation. If you're a Daily Wild member, let me know about the whole thing. But this is my message to all of you, especially the Christians. I am on your team. Many of us atheists are on your team. We just don't believe in the same things that you believe are true. We believe in the same values. The more that you gatekeep morality behind those truth claim beliefs, the more you will push people away from the values. You must separate the truth claim from the values, or you'll get more leftists. It's up to you. I don't know. Am I wrong? Am I talking on my ass here? Let me know, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. This is Morty. Once again, I am your host, Lutch, a.k.a. the Indian Jesus, here to resurrect the second coming of common sense. Catch us live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Until then, guys, we are out of here. Peace.